And now back to Operation CARE's response to domestic violence.
And welcome back to the... I'm here with Captain Middleton from Amador Sheriff's Department, and I have a few questions for you, Officer Middleton. I want to ask you, what do you think are the most common reasons why victims do not report to the police department?
I think the most common reasons are embarrassment, maybe fear of retaliation, or fear of making the problem worse.
So, like, let's say, you know, I had a question. What if a person that is illegal in the United States and they call the police department to try to, you know, get some help, and they are scared to call you? What happens to them if they, you know, if they call the police department or the sheriffs or, you know, whoever? Can they still get help through Operation CARE?
Yes, they can. If they're a victim of a crime, the sheriff's office will not treat them any differently.
So, see, this they have sometimes from some people here for 31 years. And there's a lot of people in this town that, you know, are illegal and they are being abused. And I always say, why don't you call, you know, and they don't let report it to the police. The sheriff, who is the number that we should call for, you know, do we call the CHP? Who do you call for?
Well, in an emergency, you can call 911. That will go to the sheriff's office, and they will dispatch the proper responding agency, either the police department or the sheriff's office.
So 911 is the main number
for emergencies.
For emergencies,
yes.
Like the
yes.
Correct.
For an emergency, 911.
Yes.
The normal number for the sheriff's office is 223-6500. That's correct.
All groups are at risk of domestic violence. What do you feel is the most common age range that you have to investigate?
A little different in Amador County. It's a reflection of our community. Amador County is a little bit older community than the average. Nationally, the average domestic violence victim age is about 25 years old. In 2013, in Amador County, the average age was 36.5 years old. The oldest was in the late 70s, and the youngest was 21. Yes.
So, what is the law enforcement protocol for a victim of domestic violence, and does it change depending on the age of the victim, children involved, or gender?
The domestic violence response does not change for the age of the victim or the gender of the victim. We're going to go, the sheriff's office is going to respond to the scene and try to calm the situation down and then determine whether or not a crime has been committed. If there's a crime has been committed, then we're going to investigate that crime for the purpose of prosecution. The victims are all treated the same, whether they're younger or older or male or female. We will do an investigation. We will ask some very direct questions. We will photograph injuries so that we can get the evidence to try to help this person not be in that situation again.
So what happens once they call you that you'll do all these things? Do they have to go to the hospital? Do they have to have all kinds of tests done, or what happens?
If they would need medical treatment, then yes, we would call for medical assistance. They can refuse the medical assistance if they'd like to. But all of this is done at the scene, if you will, by the responding deputies.
Okay. My next question is there a time frame for reporting of domestic violence crime? Is there a statute of limitations?
Yes, there's a statute of limitations for the crime. There's 2 crime code sections that we use for domestic violence. One of them is a misdemeanor. The statute of limitations on a misdemeanor is 1 year, and the felony section is 3 years.
So if something happened 6 months ago, and I'm afraid to come out and say it, and then on the 7th month I decide to report it, I still be able to do that up to a year?
Yes. If there's something that's happened in the past that you want to report, we would encourage you to report it. The determination on whether or not it's past the statute of limitations will be done when the deputies submit the case. They will still investigate it. They won't make that determination until it's completed.
So you have to have evidence in order to find somebody guilty, though, correct?
That's preferable, yes.
So, yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, if somebody doesn't report it, with enough time, then it probably makes it a little harder, or just depends on the situation?
It makes it more difficult if they delay in reporting, yes.
So it's better that if somebody out there, something happened, it's better to do it right away, because the chances of them getting justice is better than waiting.
That's true.
That's true. Good. Well, that's wonderful. Now, does domestic violence always result in visible injuries?
No. The felony section of domestic violence requires a traumatic condition, which is an injury to the body. Generally, those are visible. However, choking injuries sometimes are not visible, and that would still qualify as a felony. Without a traumatic condition, it is a misdemeanor battery.
So sometimes it's hard to really find the evidence, because if they're not visible, then if they mentally or somebody was verbally abused, because I call that, violence too, domestic violence, when somebody yells in your face and makes you feel like you're nothing, or, treat you. So is that domestic violence?
Yelling?
And yelling and putting you down and making you feel like you're not worth anything. I mean, that's where I part of it I don't understand, because I see a lot of verbal yelling at people, either, whether it's a man or a woman, and I think, is that domestic violence?
I wouldn't classify as a crime. I wouldn't consider it a healthy relationship. Domestic battery is an unlawful, the battery itself is an unlawful touching. Domestic battery is what we're talking about today, without injury, of pushing, shoving, hitting without a visible mark. That is a misdemeanor. If there is an injury, a visible injury, or I can articulate that there was choking had occurred in the argument, it would be a felony.
Oh, okay, well, and now, what happens if a victim doesn't speak English? Do you have access to an interpreter?
The Sheriff's Office in Amador County uses something called the language line. If we have somebody that's non-English speaking, it doesn't matter what language it is. We call a number and ask for an interpreter, and then we would do the interview on speakerphone.
So once they call you, then do you automatically just call Operation Care, or is there other programs that you are required to call?
When we're responding or when we're investigating, we have a list of protocols to do. There's a list of things that we give to the victim, victim's right pamphlet. One of the things that we do is offer assistance through Operation Care to the victims of domestic violence. So
Operation Care has really come handy for you guys to
It is helpful for us.
To put somebody in the good tracks, and, to send them the right way. So that's wonderful. What steps are taken if the victim of domestic violence has a special needs, like physical or mentally handicapped?
The sheriff's office is going to have to find a way to communicate with those individuals. We will figure out a way. It's not common for domestic violence for someone to have it's not common for us to find people with special needs. Sometimes we deal with hard of hearing people. We may write the interview questions down. We will figure out a way to ask them questions to figure out what's going on.
That's great. And is there a typical reaction from victims of domestic violence?
I don't think you can describe or put a normal reaction on victims of domestic violence. It varies.
So, everybody is different, I'm sure.
That's
Some people overreact, some people don't react, and you know, what I have always thought is like, you know, how do you help somebody when they are being, when they're in a relationship that is, you know, there's domestic violence, you know, how do you help them if they don't want the help? You know, that's the part that really bothers me, because there's so many organizations in, you know, like the Sheriff's Department, you know, can help you, put you in the right direction, you know. So, and this month is a wonderful month because it's the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we are going to go on a little break, and thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.